The first thing you learn about mercy in the outer colonies is that it's a luxury most folks can't afford. The second thing is that sometimes the cruelest kindness is knowing when to let go. I learned both lessons standing in the doorway of my sister's homestead, watching her skin catch the dying light of Kepler's twin suns like hammered copper. The plague had found her 3 weeks after I'd left for the salvage run to the Meridian belt. 3 weeks too late for goodbyes, 3 weeks too early for acceptance. Cass. Her voice carried the hollow ring of metal on metal, like wind chimes made from spent shell casings. That really you? Or am I seeing ghosts again? My name is Cassidy Thorne, and I've spent the better part of 15 years pulling useful things from the bones of dead ships. It's honest work, if you don't mind the silence and the way space looks back at you with too many eyes. But standing there in Maya's kitchen, watching her pour coffee with hands that gleamed like polished brass, I felt like I was the one being salvaged. It's me, Maya. I kept my voice steady, the way you do when talking to spooked horses or wounded animals. Just got back from the belt. Heard about the outbreak on the comm channels. She laughed, and the sound was beautiful and terrible, like church bells cast from sorrow. Outbreak. That's what they're calling it now? Maya held up her hand, flexing fingers that moved with mechanical precision. Doc Henley called it the Meridian Strain before his throat sealed up. Said it came in on one of the supply runs from the inner worlds. The coffee smelled like home and tasted like regret. I watched Maya move around her kitchen, noting the way she favored her left leg. The transformation always started in the extremities, worked its way inward, like rust claiming iron. She had maybe 2 weeks before it reached her vital organs, maybe less. How many? I asked. In Copper Falls, maybe 60% of the settlement. Some went quick, the lucky ones. Others. She gestured toward the window, where I could see the cemetery had grown 3-fold since my departure. Others fought it, tried to cut it out, burn it out, pray it out. Doesn't matter much what you try. The metal always wins. I'd seen the reports on the long-range scanners during my approach to Kepler 442b. 17 settlements affected across the planet's 3 continents. No cure, no treatment. Just a slow, inexorable transformation from flesh to metal, ending when the lungs could no longer expand, or the heart could no longer beat against its hardened cage. And you? I set down my cup, studying her face. The plague had touched her cheekbones, giving them a bronze patina that might have been beautiful under different circumstances. How long have you been fighting it? 2 weeks, give or take. Maya's smile was sad and sharp. Started in my toes, worked its way up through my legs. Doc Henley said I might have another week before it reaches somewhere important. 2 weeks. I'd been gone for 6 months, chasing a derelict freighter through the asteroid fields, and my sister had been dying for 2 weeks. The mathematics of regret don't balance easy. There's talk, Maya continued, settling into the chair across from me. Some of the afflicted, the ones who've got time left, they're saying the transformation doesn't have to be the end. They're talking about adaptation. Evolution. I'd heard whispers of it on the comm channels. Infected colonists who claimed the metallic hardening wasn't a death sentence, but a metamorphosis. Stories of people who'd completed the change and emerged as something new, something that could survive in environments that would kill ordinary humans. The authorities called it delusional thinking, the desperate fantasies of the dying. Maya, that's crazy? She laughed again, that bell-toll sound. Maybe. But Jeremiah Cross completed his transformation 3 days ago. His wife found him in their workshop, skin like polished steel, but still breathing, still talking, still him. Jeremiah Cross had been the settlement's blacksmith, a man who understood metal better than most understood flesh. If anyone could survive the transition, it would be him. Where is he now? Gone. Maya's expression darkened. The colonial authorities sent a containment team, said he was a vector for further infection. They took him to the research station in the mountains. The Meridian Research Station. I knew it by reputation. A black site where the colonial authority conducted experiments they couldn't justify in the inner worlds. If Jeremiah had gone there, he wasn't coming back. At least, not in any form his wife would recognize. Maya, listen to me. I reached across the table, careful not to touch her transformed skin. I've got a ship. We can get you to the inner worlds. Find doctors who might... Might what, Cass? Cut off my legs? Burn out the infection with radiation? She shook her head. I've run the numbers. Even if they could stop the transformation, I'd be more machine than woman by the time they finished. Outside, Kepler's twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold that matched my sister's skin. In the distance, I could see the lights of other homesteads, fewer than there had been 6 months ago. The plague was eating Copper Falls from the inside out, one family at a time. There's another option, Maya said quietly. The evolved ones, the ones who've completed the transformation. They say there's a place, deep in the Whispering Canyons, where the first infected gathered to wait out the change. They call it Haven. The Whispering Canyons were a maze of stone formations 50 miles east of Copper Falls, carved by centuries of wind and weather into something that resembled a cathedral built by mad gods. Local folklore claimed the canyons were haunted, that voices of the dead echoed through the stone passages. Most folks avoided the place. And you believe them. I believe in hope, Cass, even when it's all I've got left. I studied my sister's face, noting the way the transformation had sharpened her features, made her look like a sculpture of herself. Beautiful and distant and already half gone. If I help you get to this haven, I said slowly, there's no coming back. You understand that? Even if the stories are true, even if you survive the transformation, you won't be human anymore. I stopped being human the day the plague found me. Maya's voice was soft but certain. Now I'm choosing what to become instead. The choice hung between us like smoke from a dying fire. I could take her to the inner worlds, watch her die slowly in some sterile medical facility, while doctors poked and prodded and ultimately failed. I could stay here, hold her hand while the metal claimed her heart and lungs, or I could help her chase a desperate hope into the wilderness, knowing it would likely kill us both. When do we leave? I asked. Maya's smile was radiant, transforming her metallic features into something almost divine. Tomorrow at first light. I've already packed what we'll need. That night, I lay in my old room, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of my sister moving through the house. Her footsteps had a different rhythm now, heavier and more deliberate, like a clockwork dancer winding down. Through the thin walls, I could hear her talking to herself, or perhaps to someone else, some voice only she could hear. The plague, according to the medical reports, affected the nervous system, as well as the integumentary. Hallucinations were common in the later stages, along with synesthesia and altered perception. Some patients reported hearing voices, seeing patterns that weren't there, experiencing emotions that felt foreign and vast. I wondered what Maya was seeing, what voices whispered to her in the dark. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. Maya had prepared supplies for a 3-day journey: water, preserved food, medical supplies, though I wondered what good bandages would do for skin that had turned to metal. She moved with the careful precision of someone conserving energy, each gesture economical and purposeful. The others who went to Haven, I asked as we loaded the speeder, how many made it? I don't know. Maya secured her pack with straps that gleamed like her skin. The ones who came back to tell us about it, they were different, changed. They spoke in riddles, said things that didn't make sense until later. But they were alive, Cass. However they'd been transformed, they were still alive. The speeder was a battered civilian model I'd bought with salvage money, designed for short hops between settlements rather than wilderness expeditions. But it would get us to the Whispering Canyons, assuming we didn't encounter any of the colonial authority patrols that had been sweeping the area since the outbreak began. We left Copper Falls as the twin suns crested the horizon, painting the landscape in shades of amber and rust. The settlement looked smaller from the air, more fragile, like a child's toy left forgotten in a sandbox. Smoke rose from maybe half the chimneys. The rest stood cold and empty, their owners either dead or fled to other worlds. I used to think this place would last forever, Maya said, watching her home shrink behind us. Stupid, I know. Nothing lasts forever out here. But it felt permanent, you know. Like we were building something that would outlive us. Maybe you were. I adjusted our course toward the eastern mountains. Maybe that's what Haven is. What you built, just in a different form. The flight to the Whispering Canyons took 2 hours, following game trails and dry riverbeds to avoid the main transportation corridors. Twice we saw colonial authority ships in the distance, their sleek forms cutting through the sky like predatory birds. They didn't seem to notice us, or if they did, they had bigger concerns. The canyons appeared gradually, rising from the plains like the spine of some buried leviathan. The stone was red and gold and black, carved into impossible formations that seemed to defy gravity and reason. As we drew closer, I could hear what gave the place its name, a low, constant whisper of wind through stone, like voices speaking in languages that predated human speech. There, Maya pointed toward a narrow valley between 2 towering spires. That's where they said to go, follow the sound of singing. I didn't hear any singing, but I followed her directions, guiding the speeder through passages barely wide enough for our craft. The canyon walls rose around us like the ribs of a cathedral, their surfaces marked with patterns that might have been natural erosion or might have been something else entirely. The singing started as we descended deeper into the canyon system, a harmonic resonance that seemed to come from the stone itself. It was beautiful and alien, like whale song translated into mineral frequencies. Maya was humming along, her voice blending with the canyon's music in ways that made my skin crawl. You hear it too? She asked. I hear something. I was concentrating on flying, trying not to think about how the canyon walls seemed to be closing in around us. Maya, are you sure about this? We could still turn back, try to find another way. There is no other way, Cass. Not for me. Her voice had taken on that metallic ring again, but underneath it was something else, a harmony that matched the canyon's song. Besides, we're almost there. The valley opened before us like a hidden world, its floor covered in structures that defied easy description. They weren't quite buildings, and weren't quite sculptures, but something in between, organic forms that seemed to have grown from the stone itself. And moving among them were figures that had once been human. The transformed were beautiful in the way that storms and avalanches are beautiful, terrible and magnificent and utterly inhuman. Their skin had become living metal, but not the crude bronze and copper of Maya's early transformation. These were beings of silver and gold and platinum, their forms streamlined and graceful, adapted for purposes I couldn't begin to understand. I set the speeder down on a flat outcropping, my hands shaking as I shut down the engines. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the canyon's eternal song and the sound of footsteps approaching across stone. The figure that greeted us might have been male or female once. The transformation had rendered such distinctions meaningless. Its skin was polished chrome, its features refined to mathematical perfection. When it spoke, its voice was a symphony of harmonics that bypassed my ears and resonated directly in my bones. Maya Thorne, it said, and somehow I knew this had been Jeremiah Cross, the blacksmith who'd been taken by the colonial authority. We have been waiting for you. Jeremiah. Maya stepped forward, her own metallic skin gleaming in the canyon light. They said you were dead, that the authority tried to study us, Jeremiah replied. They could not understand that we are no longer bound by their definitions of life and death. We simply left. Walked through their walls, their cages, their understanding. I watched my sister approach the transformed beings, saw how they welcomed her with gestures that were both alien and familiar. The plague that had been killing her was, here, revealed as something else entirely. Not a disease, but a metamorphosis, a translation from one form of existence to another. The change will complete itself within hours, Jeremiah told Maya. Here, among us, you will not die. You will become. And after? Maya asked. What do we become? Jeremiah's chrome features shifted in what might have been a smile. We become what humanity needs to survive in the spaces between worlds. We become the bridge between flesh and void, between the possible and the necessary. I understood then what I was witnessing, not the end of my sister, but her evolution into something that could thrive in environments that would kill ordinary humans. The metallic transformation wasn't a plague, but an adaptation, a response to the harsh realities of life in the outer colonies. Cass. Maya turned to me, her skin now shimmering with the same chrome radiance as the others. I need you to understand. This isn't goodbye. It's hello to something new. Will you still be you? I asked. I'll be more me than I've ever been. She reached out, and for a moment I saw past the transformation to the sister I'd known all my life. But I'll also be something else, something that can survive what's coming. What's coming? The expansion, Jeremiah answered. Humanity will spread to worlds that cannot support flesh, to environments that require new forms of life. We are the first, but we will not be the last. The transformation was accelerating now, Maya's skin taking on the mirror-bright finish of the others. I could see her changing not just physically, but mentally, her consciousness expanding to encompass concepts I couldn't grasp. She was becoming something magnificent and terrible, something that was both my sister and not my sister. "I have to go," I said, backing toward the speeder. "The authority will be looking for you. For all of you." "Let them look," Jeremiah said. "We are no longer bound by their limitations." Maya approached me one last time, moving with the fluid grace of her new form. "Thank you, Cass, for bringing me home." "This isn't home," I protested. "No," she agreed, her voice now a harmony of frequencies that made the canyon walls ring in sympathy. "This is Genesis." I flew back to Copper Falls in silence, the canyon's song fading behind me like a half-remembered dream. The settlement looked even smaller now, even more fragile, a temporary arrangement of flesh and hope in a universe that demanded harder currencies. The colonial authority was waiting for me when I landed. Commander Sarah Chen, a woman whose reputation for ruthless efficiency preceded her to every world she visited, stood beside my speeder with a squad of armed Marines. "Mr. Thorne," she said as I climbed out of the cockpit, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About your sister, about where you've been, about what you've seen." I looked at Chen's hard face, at the Marines with their weapons and their certainty, and made a choice that would define the rest of my life. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "Maya died 3 days ago. I buried her in the family plot behind the homestead." Chen studied me for a long moment, her eyes like chips of flint. "Our satellites detected your speeder in the Whispering Canyons. Care to explain that?" "Scavenging," I lied. "Heard there might be some old mining equipment in the canyons. Turned out to be a false lead. And you saw nothing unusual, no signs of the infected. Nothing but rocks and wind." Chen didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she also couldn't prove otherwise, and in the outer colonies, proof mattered more than suspicion. "We're evacuating the remaining population of Copper Falls," she said finally. "The infection rate has reached critical levels. Anyone who wants transport to the inner worlds needs to be at the spaceport by tomorrow morning. And if we want to stay, then you stay at your own risk. The colonial authority is declaring this world a quarantine zone. No ships in or out without authorization." After Chen and her Marines left, I walked through the empty streets of Copper Falls, past houses where families had lived and loved and died, past the school where Maya had taught children to read, past the church where we'd buried our parents. The plague had taken most of the settlement, but not in the way the authorities believed. Some of the infected had died, it was true, but others had simply left, walked away into the wilderness, following voices only they could hear, seeking transformation rather than treatment. The Whispering Canyons weren't the only place where the evolved gathered. There were stories of similar communities forming across the planet, hidden settlements where the transformed waited for humanity to understand what they had become. I made my choice that night, standing in Maya's empty house, listening to the wind carry echoes of distant songs. I could leave with the evacuation, return to the inner worlds and spend the rest of my life pulling useful things from the bones of dead ships. Or I could stay, become a bridge between the world that was dying and the world that was being born. In the morning, I watched Chen's transports lift off, carrying the last of Copper Falls' human population to safety among the stars. I waved goodbye from Maya's front porch, then went inside to wait. The plague found me 3 weeks later, starting as a metallic sheen on my fingertips and spreading slowly up my arms. I didn't fight it. Instead, I listened to the songs that began to whisper in my blood, felt my consciousness expand to encompass concepts that had no names in human language. When the transformation was complete, I walked east toward the whispering canyons, following paths that existed in dimensions beyond the merely physical. Maya was waiting for me at the valley's edge, her chrome features radiant with welcome. "Hello, brother," she said, her voice a symphony of harmonics that made the stones sing in response. "Hello, sister," I replied, and meant it in ways that transcended flesh and blood and the small definitions of what it meant to be human. We had become something new, something necessary, something that could survive in the spaces between worlds. The plague hadn't killed us. It had given us wings, and in the vast darkness between the stars, wings were exactly what humanity would need.